Ellen DeGeneres, an unstoppable force who transformed daytime television into a haven of laughter and light. A trailblazer whose humor became a lifeline for millions. The bright, unforgettable spirit behind the Ellen DeGeneres Show and the voice of Dory, she stood tall as a symbol of courage and charisma, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in American culture. She didn't just entertain, she shattered ceilings. Her talent, her impact, her bravery, they were undeniable. But with every rise came resistance. The higher she soared, the deeper the wounds cut. The louder the applause, the harsher the judgment. Ellen became one of those rare figures, loved and lifted as a cultural icon, yet also broken under the weight of a world still unwilling to fully embrace her truth. If the storms of her past nearly broke her, the tempest surrounding her now at 67 feels darker, more relentless, like a shadow that refuses to let go. What hides behind the smile that once lit up America? What still echoes in the final chapters of a life filled with both triumph and tragedy? That's a story we'll uncover, together, whether you admired her or questioned her. If she ever left a mark in your memory, leave a like to honor a journey marked by both brilliance and heartbreak. Some homes feel warm the moment you enter. Others hold a silence that crushes like stone. For Ellen, that silence wasn't peace. It was pain. Heavy, unspoken, wounding. Born January 26, 1958, in Metairie, Louisiana, she was raised in a modest middle-class home. Her father, Elliot, worked in insurance. Her mother, Betty, kept the house running. Ellen was the youngest of two children. Her older brother, Vance, would one day also find his way into entertainment. For a while, their home seemed ordinary, even comforting. But everything changed in 1973 when her parents divorced. At just 15, Ellen watched her world collapse. The family split. Vance stayed with their father, while Ellen moved with her mother to a new house and a new life in Atlanta, Texas. But that new beginning came with shadows. What should have been a safe haven became a place of hidden pain. As a teenager, Ellen suffered a betrayal so devastating it would leave marks on her soul forever. A stepfather who crossed unforgivable boundaries. A protector who became a predator. It was a wound no child should carry. And as if that wasn't cruel enough, it came at a time when her mother was fighting breast cancer, frail in body, overwhelmed in spirit, and unable to imagine that the man beside her was the cause of her daughter's anguish. Ellen tried to speak. She needed to be believed. She needed someone, especially her mother, to hear her. But her truth was met with disbelief. Not out of malice, but because some truths are too horrific for the wounded to face. That disbelief cut deeper than the abuse. It left Ellen feeling alone, unheard, invisible. And it left Betty with guilt that would follow her for years. A tragedy of two women, both trapped in a story neither could rewrite. Years later, Ellen would admit how deeply that pain shaped her. How learning to smile while quietly breaking inside was the hardest performance of her life. The irony stings. She would become known as a bringer of laughter, yet her earliest lessons were taught by fear, silence, and betrayal. Her adolescence became a prison made of smiling family photos that told a story very different from the one she lived. She learned too soon that not every smile is honest, not every memory is safe, and those hidden scars followed her into adulthood. But from the ashes of that pain, something unexpected began to rise. Humor. It didn't come from joy. It came from survival. Quick-witted, self-deprecating, sharp as a blade, comedy became her armor, her rebellion. Her only weapon against the darkness that once threatened to consume her. On nights when the pain felt unbearable, Ellen didn't cry. She crafted punchlines. She turned her silence into stories. Her wounds became setups for jokes that would one day make the world laugh. It wasn't entertainment, it was resistance. Her comedy wasn't born of privilege, it was forged in necessity. It was her escape, her survival, her way of reclaiming power in a world that had tried to silence her. The pain of her childhood left deep scars, but they also shaped her voice, one that the world would come to recognize, celebrate, and sometimes scrutinize. She didn't stay silent, she took that voice to a stage. A platform, a destiny. The girl who once sat in silence, carrying shame that wasn't hers to bear, stepped into adulthood with nothing but a battered spirit and a stubborn will to survive. In 1976, Ellen dropped out of the University of New Orleans after just one semester. No degree, no plan. Just a storm in her heart and a need to find her own way. She returned to New Orleans, a city full of life, music, and laughter. But for her, it was a daily struggle to survive. Rent piled up, cupboards stood empty. Pride slipped away. She took whatever jobs she could. She worked as a secretary in a law office, typing until her fingers went numb. She folded clothes at JCPenney until her back ached. Hunger was real. Bills didn't wait. And yet, somewhere in that grind, the embers of something greater began to glow. She painted murals with hands stained in colors that never fully washed away. Waitressed long hours in smoky diners, balancing heavy trays while the smell of grease clung to her clothes. She poured drinks behind bar counters deep into the night, surrounded by laughter that never quite belonged to her. Each paycheck felt like a fragile lifeline. Every shift drained her body, but somehow it strengthened her soul. Dreams weren't handed out. They had to be scraped together, drop by drop, day by aching day. Poverty didn't just test Ellen, it tempered her. She learned how to stretch crumpled bills across 7 days, how to make a loaf of bread last like gold. She skipped meals, saved bus fare and spare coins, and smiled at strangers while her own stomach growled in quiet rebellion. Even on the most exhausting days when her back screamed from carrying trays and her pockets rattled with little, more than lint and pennies, a voice deep inside whispered that she was made for something more. She carried around a beat-up notebook, its pages smudged with coffee rings and fingerprints, filled with scribbled jokes, fragments of absurdity, and raw pain cleverly disguised as comedy. These were seeds, tiny flashes of a future no one else could see yet. At night, she'd return to a dim, rented room, walls peeling, a single flickering lamp buzzing like a tired insect. There, she rehearsed alone, sometimes to a cracked mirror, sometimes to a pet, sometimes only to her shadow on the wall, her silent, constant audience. In that small, forgotten space, Ellen was quietly building a life out of punchlines, turning hunger into humor and solitude into timing. Those nights were long and lonely. Dinner was often half a sandwich brought home from work. Applause lived only in her imagination. The silence in the room felt heavier than the tray she carried all day. But still, she practiced. She refined her timing, sharpened her wit. Each line wasn't just a joke, it was defiance. It was survival. It was the sound of a young woman refusing to give up on herself. She was teaching herself discipline, resilience, courage, and timing, all without an audience, all born from nights the world forgot her. But Ellen never forgot who she was becoming. By the early 1980s, she began stepping onto the dim stages of New Orleans, gritty comedy clubs and rundown bars where laughter was rare and attention came at a cost. She wasn't polished yet. Confidence came and went, but her voice was already different, clever, quick, self-deprecating in a way that invited